if we can maybe start explaining God's role, majesty, and supremacy over other beings, which we did cover in some episodes. We don't have to, spend a whole hour just on this. Maybe we can cover some general, examples and stuff, both from the Bible and extra biblical writings. How we can see God and His attributes being way more supreme and transcendent and above any other God.
I'll do this because it's actually a bridge for another episode if we want. We talked recently about Babylonian mythology and religion, and I'll say simply, go listen or go look it up. This is a reason to look into other stories, other religions. Yahweh doesn't behave like any of them. There is overlap, especially how humanity approaches that Elohim, that God. But what we know about Yahweh, how he's represented, is very, very different.
Yeah, I know, Carrie, you and I mentioned this a while ago when we talked about deities in one of the religions. They were like so annoyed with people being so noisy, and I reflect that when I hear my neighbors. I'm like, yeah, I understand you guys. I'm not on your side, but I understand being bothered by noise. So these guys were like, hey, let's just smite them because they're too noisy. I'm like, I don't approve, but I understand.
Yeah. It's too bad that God's never invented headphones.
So you're saying they're not like ancient aliens? They had this highly developed tech. They were not.
No.
No.
Obviously not, or they'd have headphones. That's how I survive the noise in my house. Is headphones.
Earplugs. There you
go. Okay, so when we talk about this new subtopic of God's role, majesty, and supremacy, one of you mentioned the Most High God. How is biblical Most High God seeing then maybe Islamic Most High God, or Babylonian Most High God, or Canaanite Most High God, or any sort of Most High God in any of the pagan pantheons? Can we can dissect any of these, to give examples so we can just understand the differences.
I think personally with trying to differentiate if the Most High God of Islam is the same Most High God of Christianity, is the same Most High God of Judaism, it takes a lot of getting to know the character that is being expressed, right? And like Paul said, when you look into the deities of other cultures and you look at their quid pro quo relationship with the people that serve and worship them, Yahweh does not operate the same way, right? Specifically with the covenantal relationship and the times that we see God making a covenant with humanity, specifically with like Abraham. Abraham's not allowed as the suzerain to walk through the covenant animal. God walks alone or walks with himself, because you have the smoking pot and the torch. And so he takes on both the responsibility of the suzerain and also the vassal, going, I'm going to fulfill it, and it doesn't matter what you do. And I think that's completely different. Whereas all the other ones, it's a quid pro quo. If I do this, God responds this way, or the gods respond this way. So I think, that being said, there's other times where, for instance, some missionaries will go. Paul does it on Mars Hill. But missionaries in Alaska, for instance, that were there for a long time, got to know the culture. And after helping them develop a written language and started to translate the Bible into their language, one of the ways that they approached the subject of witnessing to them about God was to use their Great Spirit and go, the character that you give to the Great Spirit, but him being outside of your grasp, I'm here to show you who he is. So using the exact same format and the exact same format that Paul uses on Mars Hill.
Yeah, I think that it's an ontology thing, and that we have to look at the characteristics. Like, I get this question a lot in some of my groups of, oh, is Allah the same as God? And some Muslims will say that he is, and because they believe in the Old Testament and all this. And if we base our God in the same book, isn't it the same God? Well, I mean, look at the characteristics of the God and say, are they the same? Yeah, maybe not. And I think that's, kind of why it's really important to understand the supremacy of Yahweh and understand the characteristics of our creator God and really dig into that as our basis for everything else.
Right. I think that specifically with the idea of Allah being the same God as Yahweh, you can look at some of the characteristics, love being one of those. Now, every Islam will say that their God is also love. But when you're pushing on how are they love, when did they become love, there is this point where you need creation for Allah to be love because he needs something other than himself. Whereas in the Christian and some of the two powers in heaven perspective of the Old Testament, love can be found within God himself. And that makes a big difference as to whether or not that characteristic is saying that they're the same God or not. And I think that's a real good way to just divide those down the middle is go, okay, one, the characteristics of your God, where do they appear? What are those that are eternal characteristics of that God? And we're making a claim that God's eternal characteristic is love, and that those, because of the Trinity, where they can't make that claim.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's categories to this, right? Like very significant, very, very prevalent in a lot of the religious texts is the succession myth. The creator God is not the God that becomes the most high, right? There's layers or generations to it. The Abrahamic religions, at least, the one that creates is also the one with all the authority. So we've got a common thread there. But yeah, some of these other characteristics and how it's connected are different. I think it's important to recognize the differences, but also it's a good place to have compassion where maybe these people have only had partial understanding, and we can reach out and fill in the picture too, right?